I move into the city with a suitcase that smells faintly of cedar and the last of my mother's lavender soap. The room in the old building on Via della Rose is small, a single window that looks out over a courtyard where lemon trees fight for sunlight. But it has a door that opens onto a street that hums, and that hum is what I want. I want noise. I want to be anonymous for a while. I want a life that begins and ends with simple things. Coffee that's too hot, a book halfway read, a paycheck that makes sense. The gallery is on the corner. A low storefront with tall panes of glass that catch the morning light and throw it back as shards. The sign says Galleria Moretti. Though I know nothing about Moretti except the name on the paper my landlord shoved at me and the way the letters seem old and settled. I like the quiet inside. Cool floors, the smell of turpentine and clean cotton, the way light pools on a painting like water. My job is small. I hang, I dust, I write captions and careful measured sentences. People come and people leave. I like the rhythm. He finds me on a Tuesday. He walks in like someone who has rehearsed his steps. Slow, measured, a man who knows how to make a room lean toward him. His jacket carries the crispness of fresh money. His hair is a dark, dangerous mess. His jaw has the kind of angle that could cut. When he smiles, it is not for me, and yet it steals something in my chest. Good morning, I say, more breath than voice. I hand him a brochure because that is what I do. He takes it. His fingers are large, calloused at the edges like he's used to holding heavy things. Guns, perhaps, or more likely burdens. His eyes catch mine, and I feel ridiculous for the way my palms grow warm. Is it open to view? His voice is low and calibrated. The city closes its angle to listen. Yes. I don't look away. He studies a painting of a woman with closed eyes. Oil thick as honey. But when he looks at me again, there's a curiosity there. Like someone tasting a spice for the first time and deciding whether to keep it. My name is Dante Valerio. He says it like a statement carved in stone. I have a name I do not yet understand. I will be in town for a few days. Perhaps you can recommend a piece to take home. We talk about light and shadow and the way certain canvases catch the evening. His questions are pointed, his interest precise. He does not waste words. He lingers on mine as if testing the seams, searching for the person inside the linen. When he leaves, he does not take a painting. He leaves a card on the counter, thick paper, the Valerio emblem embossed in black, and a sentence scratched in an ink that could be both invitation and warning. Come to the private viewing tonight. NPM. I insist. I am a woman who makes sensible choices. Rent, groceries, a plan for winter. But when I hold that card, it feels like holding a match to a moth. There is a part of me that is tired of sensible. That night my hands are steady, although my stomach is a nervous bird. I tell myself the gallery will look the same at 9 as it does at noon. I tell myself I will leave when my confidence curdles. I tell myself everything that makes leaving possible. I still go. He is there before the crowd through the heavy doors gathers. He stands by a sculpture like a sentinel, a glass of something amber beaded with ice in his palm. He wears the night like a coat, composed, distant. When I walk toward him, the room seems to narrow to 2 heartbeats. You came. He does not sound surprised. There is a small curve to his mouth that could be amusement or relief. I tell myself I will not let him see how my chest is rearranging itself. I wanted to see the collection. It is the truest half-truth I can give. We drift into the folds of the gallery together. He points out a line in a charcoal portrait, tracing it with the ghost of a finger, and my body maps his movements like a compass to the needle. People talk around us, the clink of glasses, the soft laughs, the clapping of polite hands. But under it all there is a river of something impending. You are different from the others, he says, not unkindly. Different how? My voice is small, you listen. You don't pretend to know what you don't. He peers at me like a man who studies rare coins. That honesty is inconveniently rare. If he means I am inexperienced, naive, I will accept the label if it keeps me close to that voice. Later, in the ache after, I will wish I had argued. At midnight, the city sighs and the private viewing dwindles. He walks me out into the street under a lamppost that throws a thin halo on the pavement. The air is cool and smells like the sea. He reaches for my hand with the gentlest certainty. A single finger press that is both permission and claim. You should let me take you to dinner, he says. Officially. under the excuse of discussing a purchase. You make that sound like a trap, I answer, heart still jangling. A trap where we both get to eat? He smiles, and the world shifts, slightly more present. We dine in a small restaurant that smells of garlic and roasted tomatoes. He orders for me with a confidence that bothers and attracts me. He listens when I speak of simple things. An aunt who taught me to bake, a dog I once had, a poem that I carry folded in a purse. When he speaks of himself, the words are fewer, but they land with weight. You are not from here, he says finally, as if finding the exact place where the conversation changes course. No, I am honest without thinking. Not really. Do you miss something? The question is surgical. Sometimes. A face, a place. I have more of a feeling than a memory for it. I fold my hands around my coffee cup, because otherwise they will tremble. He watches me through the steam, as if waiting for a confession. Instead, I tell him about the lemon trees in the courtyard, and the way rain makes the city smell like iron and fresh bread. When the night ends, he walks me to my building. We stand at the foot of the stairs and the street hums low, indifferent. He takes my face in both his hands, rough palms, unexpected tenderness, and he says, I would like to see you again. I say yes because I cannot say anything else. He leaves and the apartment feels like a body that remembers the warmth of another's skin. I fall asleep to the echo of his voice, and in my dream I am both afraid and home. Days relent into a rhythm I learn like a song. The gallery settles around us, the same echo of footsteps on stone, the faint adhesive tang of fresh labels, the way the spotlight makes an ordinary face into something sacred. He comes more than necessary. He invents reasons to be there. A sudden interest in a print that arrived that morning, a curiosity about a sculptor whose name I can't pronounce. Mostly he comes because he can, and because when he does, the world rearranges itself into two halves, the hours with Dante Valerio and the hours that are not. When he sits at the counter, time dilates. People step around us like tide around a rock. He asks questions that seem simple. Do you like this? Why this artist? And his attention is a light I hadn't known I'd been seeking. I find myself talking in paragraphs I have never said aloud. He listens like he's memorizing the map of me. You drink your coffee black, he notes once, as if reading a weather vane. Yes. I reach for the cup as if it is an anchor. He watches me do it, and then, without ceremony, slides his hand over mine. His palm is warm and broad. It fits mine in such a way that the gallery's silence grows immediate and intimate. No one else is there. Outside, the street hums like a distant argument. His fingers curl over mine, then release, slow, as if timing a pulse. You get easily startled, he says, and there is a small smile that makes the corner of his mouth crooked. It's not meant to be cruel. It's an observation, like cataloging a rare bird. I am not used to being noticed. The confession feels ridiculous and true. I am 30 and new to being the focus of someone's entire attention. It's a powerful thing, he says. Being seen. There's a tenderness to that word from him that feels like progress. I feel ridiculous for toasting little hopes to it. Sophia watches it all from the reception desk like a hawk. She teases me about him the way people tease butterflies, affectionate and sharp. He looks like trouble wrapped in a suit, she says the first week he's a regular. Promise me you won't go diving headfirst without checking for rocks. I'll be careful. It's another promise, softer than the ones I make to bills and to breakfast plans. Promises to people feel weightless at first. They become heavy in the mouths of time. We share small rituals. He arrives at the gallery and I make the coffee. He lies about not liking sweets and then eats the whole pastry I offer in 3 decisive bites. He brings me small things. A scarf in a color that makes my eyes look like sea glass, a book with a dog-eared corner and a note inside. Read the 2nd chapter aloud to me. I read to him from it under the skylight, while dust motes drift, and we both pretend the world beyond the glass does not exist. He is precise about his kindness. It is given like a measured medicine. Once, when rain catches me in the street and I forget my umbrella, he appears from the depths of nowhere with a coat slung over his arm. He drapes it over my shoulders, and the fabric smells like cedar and cold air, and a faint spice I can't name. He buttons it with an economy that makes me feel small and fortunate. "You don't need to do this for me," I tell him, my teeth catching on the word need. "I choose to," he answers. And the simplicity of that clause is more tender than any grand declaration. Choice, I suppose, can be freer than fate. There are softer things that feel like secret confessions. When he stops mid-sentence to tuck a stray hair behind my ear, when he brushes the skin at the base of my throat with the same discretion he would give to a museum piece, when he tells me, offhand, that in the morning he likes to watch the city wake from his balcony and thinks of people like me who live small, honest lives. "You are a particular kind of calm," he says once, pressing his thumb along the seam of my palm. It is a tactile prayer that lodges somewhere under my ribs, but his world leaks in. Men show up with eyes like knives when he is in the room. Phones vibrate and produce sharp tones that translate into commands. He receives messages that are not small, and his jaw hardens in response. He watches the street from the gallery window with a vigilance that makes my stomach tighten. Once, after a weekend away, I notice new faces lingering in the alley behind the gallery. Someone staking a place like they are waiting for a storm to break. The unease in my chest becomes a small, rising animal. "You attract attention," Sophia says one night as we lock up. She angles her chin at me like a lighthouse beam. "Be careful what kind of attention you want." "I don't want anyone to get hurt," I say, and the words fall between us with the weight of possibility. "He will protect you," Sophia says. "He will also make things worse. That's how this world works." I do not like her certainty. It sounds like the old women in the marketplace who chop at herbs with the absolute conviction of a lifetime. Yet her tone is not prophecy alone. It's the kind of experience that sets the edges of truth. I listen because she has been right about small things. Which men are liars, which fashion trends will die out, and her warnings have a quiet authority. One evening, a woman arrives at the gallery in a dress that smells like expensive winter, an unused regret. She moves with the measured grace of someone who knows she has been missed. She looks at me over the rim of her glass like an inspector of goods. "Dante," she says, and the way she says his name is an exhale of ownership. "Is this the little bird?" "It's Elena," Dante replies, and his voice is neutral, in a way that tips something into the air like a scale. She smiles at me like a polished coin. "You are luminous in a daylight way," she says. Her words are not mean, but they are precise. A certain brightness I could never hold. I blush in a way I have never done before, heat rising to the roots of my hair, because a part of me knows how to fold at such comments like paper. Dante's hand rests on the small of my back, and I feel the reverberation of his warmth. He deflects the woman with an ease that is not practiced, but lethal in its efficiency. "We'll discuss the sculpture later," he says, and the woman's smile thins, and she slips away with the same quiet reserve of someone who understands which doors are closed. Moments like that reveal a fissure I cannot ignore. The world he lives in contains people who measure value in the way others measure time. The more I step into his orbit, the more I see how many things have been arranged around him like pieces on a chessboard. Sometimes his hands are violent in their tenderness. Once, when a thief tries to lift the tip jar from the counter, he catches the man's wrist with a grip that would have broken a lesser person. The thief whimpers. Dante's voice is a low sermon as he returns the jar. "We don't steal from places that feed art," he says, and the man nods, terrified. He is merciful in that moment, but the muscle in his neck remains taut like a wire. I watch him become someone else, and then slide back into the man who hums songs on terraces and presses gentle kisses behind my ear. I let myself be led into small intimacies. The way he touches the knuckle of my thumb like committing an oath. The way he rests his hand at the small of my back while we look at a painting, guiding me without words. The way he brings me a single bloom and lays it beside my mug as if offering a domestic benediction. We learn each other's climates, the shy ways we reserve laughter, the frightful absolutes we keep secret. He tells me about a photograph he keeps folded in a drawer, an image of a woman who might have been young and kind. He never tells me the name. I imagine that photograph like a relic he polishes during lonely nights. There are things I refuse to know, some that stick like burrs on a coat. Rumors drift through the neighborhood like smoke. The Valerio name has a gravity that sounds like both respect and warning. Shopkeepers pull their collars up in a way that suggests they do not want to be looked at with the same careful appraisal. Once, a man who runs a wine shop on the corner stops me as I pass and speaks quickly, head turned like a conspirator. "Be careful," he says in a voice that tips toward fear. "Men like him, they don't leave crumbs. They sweep clean." I go to Dante with the bluntness of someone who wants straight answers. "Are you dangerous?" I ask him, plucking the question between us like a black thread. He doesn't laugh. He studies me with a patience that is almost kind, and then, "I am not what people would say if they wanted to sleep easily," he replies. "I am necessary for a lot of things they prefer to ignore." He leans forward, his breath a warm tide against my cheek. "But I am not you. You are safe with me." The words land, and I want to believe them because there is a simplicity in his conviction that is intoxicating. He cradles my face then, an action that seems to fold the day into something that can be held. His fingers cup my cheek like an artist framing a painting. The tenderness of it makes the edges of my world seem less jagged. I let myself fall headlong into that small sanctuary. We learn each other slowly, and in the process, the city becomes softer. I do not always ask about the things I know he does. Sometimes ignorance is a comfort, a blanket I can drape over one shoulder and call protection. He does not force me to know. He gives me the choice to accept his hands and the warmth that comes with them. But the world outside our gallery window remembers the nature of things. Dangerous men leave stains no matter how much perfume you layer on. And so we keep going, collecting glimpses and small mercies. I fall into the easy cadence of being near him, of letting his hand find mine with a frequency that feels like survival. I like, in a secret place, that he notices the way I laugh at absurd things, the way I press my thumb along the seam of a book. The smallness of these moments is what I anchor to because they are mine, private and unpolitical. One night on a terrace where the harbor lights spill like broken constellations, he cups my face and says, "You are the truest thing I have found in a long time." The rawness of that admission makes me both foolishly proud and unmoored. What if the truest thing is also the most dangerous? I ask, because suspicion is a muscle I have learned to flex. "Then we will be dangerous together," he answers, and his thumbs draw slow circles on my cheek that feel like stitches being mended. I let myself imagine a life with him, not the neat one people describe in novels, but a life that is ragged and real, stitched together with stolen afternoons and late-night coffees, with the comfort of a hand at my back. For the first time in a long time, I allow myself to be seen without armor. It is terrifying and delicious, and all the other words that mean surrender. The connection feels, in its own quiet way, like an uprising. I am not naive enough to think it will be easy. I have a sense now that the man I am folding into himself has been built by hard choices and colder hands. I will learn that those hands can also be gentle. For now, I taste the warmth of his mouth when he murmurs my name, and the rest of the world seems to wait politely at the door. There comes a time when affection and ownership shade into one another like twilight into night. It is subtle at first, a tightening of a smile, a comment that rests on the edge of command. Dante begins to take measures that I ought to resent, and somehow do not. Instead, I am grateful and guilty by turns. He starts leaving a small team outside the gallery when he knows I will be alone late. Men I do not know, steady, careful, take evening shifts at the door, sipping weak coffee and pretending to be indifferent. They are a fixture, like the radiator or the framed landscapes. I tell myself this is prudence. I tell myself I am being protected. But when a man follows me from the corner that one foggy afternoon, and the hairs rise along my arms, it is Dante's voice on my phone that calms the tremor inside me. "Stay inside," he says. So close I feel the distance between us collapse. "Do not open the door for anyone." "No," I say. The word is honest and hollow. I am not used to being told what to do, even by the man whose hands I have begun to trust. He shows up like a god who has grown care for gods. He arrives without fanfare at the gallery entrance, shoulders broad, eyes narrowed as if the air itself contains treachery. The man who trailed me slinks like a rat out of the frame and disappears from my life as quickly as he had entered. Dante stands beside me, and the gallery breathes again. He does not ask questions. He does not lecture. He simply places a hand over mine, and the tremor in my limbs eases. "You don't have to live with fear," he says, in a tone that is both command and consolation. It is difficult to know how to reply to a voice that is both gentler than the evening and absolute in authority. "I don't want to be under anyone's protection forever," I say. The sentence tastes of stubbornness and something like agency. When I say it, Dante's face softens, and for a moment I see the man behind the armor, a tired, older thing who might have wanted different futures. "You will not be," he says. "I want you to have choices. I only want you to be safe until you can." There is a hypocrisy in that comfort I nearly combust at recognizing. Safety as a temporary state under someone's guardianship reads like a promise that will bend. He knows it, and yet repeats the reassurance, because he is trained to create illusions that keep people calm. Rumors morph into actions. A smear in the gossip column appears, an innocent photograph with an insinuating caption. A delivery to the gallery that is not art at all but a message. A bullet embedded in a small block of wood. It thunks on the threshold and I nearly swoon when I see it. My fingers feel like they belong to someone else as I cradle it in my hands. The world that had been soft and safe is suddenly edged with the metallic tang of danger. "Who would do this?" Sophia whispers. Hands clap to her mouth as if the sound might summon more trouble. "Enemies," Dante says. His voice is a blade that slices through the air. He does not fume. He does not shout. He becomes a man who plans war with the ice of a general, or people who want to remind us they exist. He is careful with me in the days that follow, like someone who believes his touch could bruise. He drives me home when the city is slick with rain and tucks the blanket around my shoulders with a domesticity that takes me aback. Once, after a long week, he lifts my chin and says, "Tell me about something that makes you feel brave." I tell him about the lemon tree in my courtyard and the way it refuses shadow, and he laughs with a softness that loosens my muscles, yet I see the cost of his care. He gives orders that ripple outward. Men move at his insinuation. He receives updates like weather forecasts, brisk, efficient, and without visible strain. There is a part of me that resents the mechanics, a small bitter plant that takes root when I think of how much of my life is being refiled into other people's hands. I do not like being rearranged without consultation, even if the rearrangement keeps me alive. "You should know what comes with being with me," Dante says one night, as if reading my growing resentment as a thing that must be placated. We are in his car, the city streaking past like smeared jewels. His voice is low and intimate. "I already know enough," I say. Anger cools over me like a sudden wind, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. "It is not for you to like," he replies, the sentence precise as a legal clause. "It is for you to survive." The statement feels like a verdict. I bristle because deep down I suspect he is right. Survival, after all, requires certain sacrifices. He reaches across the seat and lays his hand over mine. It is a gesture of truce and of claim, a soft map on a hard world. In the quiet between us, he tells me more in the way he looks at me than with the words he offers. There are corners in his face I haven't seen. The scar along his jaw that tightens when he smiles, the way the skin at his temple flutters when he is irritated. He takes me to places that are not on the tourist maps. A tiny bookshop with a cat who sleeps on top of a stack of poetry. A rooftop where they watch fishermen haul in nets like stubborn men pulling in memories. He tells me about the business he runs, not the numbers, but the fact that sometimes people have to do ugly things to protect things they think are worth protecting. Do you ever regret it? I ask him one evening, leaning into the warmth of a couch in his fortress of a home. Every morning, he says. His voice is almost a whisper. And every night. Regret is the cost of being alive in a chamber that demands violence. Hearing him admit it is both devastating and humanizing. He is not a monster in the way stories make monsters tend to be. He is a man who performs hard things and then pays, in a currency of slow grief, for what he has done. That admission softens something inside me and makes me love him in a way that is complicated and raw. But love is not enough to erase unease. An argument erupts between us like a thunderstorm clipped from a page. It starts small. A decision he makes without my counsel. A choice to move a shipment of art through a different port. It is practical, he says. It is safer. His men do not need to be privy to the reasons for everything that happens. But my spine stiffens because decisions are the framework of life, and being talked over feels like a theft. You act as if my opinion is an optional extra, I snap, fury sharpening my vowels. You're safe because I make those choices, he counters. I learn the edges so you don't have to. Safe, I repeat, the taste of the word bitter now. Safe like a prize behind glass. His eyes flash, a momentary storm behind the calm. His hand finds mine and squeezes, not conciliatory but almost apologetic. I don't want to be your jailer, he says. I want to be your harbor. Harbors have walls, I say. Walls keep people out and keep things in. He looks at me like he might say something that would change the course of the argument, but instead, he folds like someone who has been navigating these storms for years and knows which battles are worth escalating. He leans forward and presses his forehead to mine, an odd, intimate peace sign. Tell me when I overstep, he murmurs. I will, I say. But I know that once you are inside a world made of weapons and loyalty, stepping back is not as easy as simply asking for the door. The truth is, I love him. It is not the innocent affection of a newcomer. It is the messy, complicated devotion that comes with knowing someone's faults and keeping them anyway. I let him kiss the curve of my neck in the small hours, and I press my hand against the shape of his chest as he breathes the way a child buries its face in a pillow. He is a shelter I sometimes wish I could walk out of and sometimes cannot imagine leaving. One night, as we lay together and the city lights blink like distant lighthouses, he says, I will never let anyone hurt you. The promise is a soft rope around my heart. But what if the way you keep me safe is the thing that breaks me? I whisper. He wraps his arms tighter, and I feel the trembling in his shoulders. The same tremble that creeps into my hands when fear sits like a beast at the edge of sleep. Then I will break too, he says, with a ferocity I do not know how to answer. Under his shadow, I begin to understand the shape of my choices. The life he offers is warm and dangerous. It has corners that will cut and edges that will gleam. I lean into his chest, trying to reconcile the man I love with the world he carries. Sometimes the shadow is a comfort. Sometimes it is a warning sign flashing red. We keep going, because love is stubborn and the heart is an optimist. We forgive small things, and we make pacts about certain lines we will not cross. But the city does not wait politely outside our door. It presses in, loud and unsympathetic, with its demands and its warnings. And in the days that follow, when small men in larger suits begin to observe the gallery more closely, when the air tastes of glass and gasoline at odd hours, I realize being loved by a man like Dante is not a quiet thing. It is a drumroll, a magnified heartbeat. It is being pulled into a world whose geography I do not entirely understand. I let him hold my hand, because without his hand the dark feels like it might swallow me whole. But I begin to learn that hands can both protect and bind, and that living in the shadow of power is a lesson I will be forced to learn quickly. The night air is metallic, like the inside of an open tin, and the city smells of wet asphalt and frying garlic. I close the gallery door behind me and the lock gives a soft, final click. The light inside is a low pool on a painting I have loved for weeks, an abstract where the artist has dragged black through crimson until it looks like a wound. I stand in front of it because standing still feels like prayer. My phone buzzes in my pocket. Dante, I think, and the sound of his name on the screen steadies something inside me. It is a habit now. My thumb knows how his letters sit against glass. But tonight it is not him. It is a number I do not know. The message is single, cold. Leave now. My ears ring with the absurdity of ignoring a stranger. The gallery is my life and my rent and the place where the light folds in ways that make my hands want to linger. Still, when I look out the front window, the street is thicker than usual with people who should not be there. There are cars double parked, silhouettes like ragged teeth. A man lingers by the corner smoke shop, and his hands are not idle. The hairs along my arms prick. Stay here, I tell Sophia when she answers the phone, and I hear the concern in her voice. Lock the back. Don't open for anyone. She breathes into the receiver like she is running a small ambulance. Okay, call Dante, I do. There's a pause when he answers, and then his voice, always a low instrument, takes on an edge I have only heard once before. Hold your breath. Lock the doors. Don't let anything go out. It's the command tone. My body responds like a muscle remembering its shape. I put the phone down, latch the deadbolt, and watch the glass reflect the room like a memory holding itself in place. The first sound that tells me we are no longer safe is subtle. The sigh of a foot against a drain pipe. The whisper of canvas being shoved aside. Then a crash, like a gust bursting through a paper curtain. A man, young, reckless with adrenaline, slams through the back door and the gallery air fills with the smell of cheap cigarette smoke and sweat. He is not alone. They spill into the space like a dark tide. Panic should come. Instead, I feel a cold, thin focus unfurl under my skin. Get behind the counter, I tell Sophia. My voice is an order that makes me dizzy because it is not the voice I usually hear, but one that has been sharpened somewhere. By circumstance, or by a man who loves me. The men move like they are looking for something specific. They tear through display cases, sweep canvases aside with hungry hands, and their laughter is glass. One of them sees me and stops, the interest in his face like a predatory scent. You the one they call Moretti? He asks, approaching the counter with the swagger of someone who expects entertainment. I do not answer. I am too busy watching a shadow by the window, a single silhouette that makes my heart hitch. Dante is there, not in some cinematic thunder, but in the doorway, and the gallery seems to fold toward him like paper toward flame. He stands like a god who has been woken from sleep, a silhouette cut from flint. He does not shout. He does not make a sound that is more than the soft warning of a predator moving in for the kill. How dare you, he says, and the words do not fit in my mouth. They fit in the air like winter. The men turn as one at his voice. Their bravado is brittle now, like cheap glass under someone with real hands. Two go for knives, one tries a bluff. The room becomes a choreography of movement. Dante is quiet and fast. So precise my brain has trouble following the economy of his motion. Hands that had once rested on tables now take lives with a businesslike efficiency. A man I would have called brave seconds before falls with a soft sob. The sound makes my stomach drop. They are not careful. They are not slow. They leave red on the floor, little sore moons where life is absent. The air fills with the coppery scent of blood and the thin chemical tang of something burning. An overturned lamp, maybe, or the careless friction of bodies against canvas. I have never seen him like this. The man who brings poems and small scarves and reads me in the light is now a riot of animal precision, a quiet storm that demolishes everything between him and me. One of the attackers lunges. Dante catches his wrist and breaks it with a movement so measured it might as well be a metronome resetting time. The man screams, sound peeled from his throat, and Dante's face is a slab of stone as he holds him there. He looks at me then, and for this second I see not the monster the whispers promise, but a man who is afraid in a way that makes his hands cruel. Go, he says to Sophia. Get out, now. She grabs my hand, and her fingers are white with fear. We bolt through the back, out a fire exit into the alley where the air hits like a wall. Sirens start, distant, a thin promise of law catching up. Men spill out moments later, cursing and carrying wounds. Dante is behind them like a shadow that refuses to fall away. He walks to the edge of the alley, and the light from the street slicks across his shoulders. When he comes to me, he does not touch me at first. He stands like someone who has been burned. Then he reaches for my face with hands that should not be caressing. They are not gentle. No, tenderness is not the right word. They are deliberate, as if one can map a way back to normal by touching the perimeters of what was violated. Are you hurt? He asks. The sentence is small, fracturing in the wake of what happened. No, I say, and the lie tastes like ash. He pulls me into him, and the world narrows to the press of his chest and the thrum beneath it. His breath is rough. His hands are not steady. He smells like iron and oil and something primal that is not words. I bury my face against his shirt, into the place that holds the contour of his heart. And I feel the catch inside him like a trapped animal trying to find a path. You shouldn't have been here, he says against my hair. There is no accusation in it, only a raw confession that he believes he caused this by loving me enough to be present. I want to be angry, to tell him that I chose to stay because he asked me to before, because the gallery is my life. But my throat closes. The truth sits like a pebble. I am terrified. And somewhere inside that fear is a darkening gratitude that it was he who came for me. He is quiet for a long time, and when he finally speaks, his words are the kind that resettle the bones in your chest. I will take care of this, he says. I will make sure no one looks at you wrong again. The sentiment should have been reassurance. Instead, I realize with a new, almost studious horror that with protection comes blood on hands. I see it then. The way his knuckles are nicked. The smear of red that stains the cuff of his white shirt. He notices my eyes, and when he lifts his hand to his mouth, he presses it hard, as if to remove the evidence. He turns his wrist, and his palm is a map of red. I want to be angry in the way I was earlier, the sharpness of my own willful smallness. But when he pulls me close and his lips find mine, a forced, urgent kiss meant to anchor me, I feel something in me break and soften at the same time. The kiss is not tender, not at first. It is a desperate thing, like a man trying to convince himself that because he can hold me, he has undone what he made happen. It is a lie and a prayer and a confession all at once. Why? I whisper into his collar. The question is a blade. He does not answer with words. He answers with his body. Shaking now, a man who has seen too much and is trying to hold a thing dear without letting it fall away. The night bleeds into us, into our shared fragile space. When we finally pull apart, his eyes find mine with a steadiness that is frightening. I am sorry for the mess I brought to your doorway. You brought it? I repeat, and for the first time I test the edges of accusation. He closes his eyes as if to shut out the maze of choices. Yes, he says softly, and no. I am a part of it, Elena. I did what I had to. That night I am unable to sleep. I press my palms into my eyes and try to remember the first time he laughed in the sunlight. I count the small mercies, the scarves, the poems, and when I do the list of his gentle things stitches into the shape of the man I love. But between each stitch is a thread of something darker now, and it moves through the cloth like a cold draft. The next morning, the gallery smells like antiseptic and lemon. There are police and a man who wants to take a statement, and the questions feel clinical and far away from the rawness under my skin. Dante stands at a window, watching as evidence markers dot the floor. He looks smaller than he did in the alley, or perhaps I am larger with feeling. He turns to me, and for the first time I will remember his face like a map, marked now by violence, by necessity. And by the way, he tries to atone in the way men who have blood in their hands often try, with the currency of presence. You said you weren't a monster, I say in the quiet of the office after everyone has gone. The sentence attests, I am not a monster, he replies, but I am not innocent. The distinction hangs between us, a line drawn in the dust. I am angry. I am frightened. I am grateful he saved me. I am horrified he had to do it. The contradiction is a live wire in my veins. He comes to me then, and his hands are careful in the way someone who knows the fragile things are handled. He cups my face, and there is a softness there now that the night stripped away. I will keep you safe, he says again. This time the vow feels less like an order and more like an ache. And if your safety costs me pieces of myself, I ask. The words are not rhetorical. Then we will find each other's pieces, he answers. We will keep what we can. I want to believe him. I want to be optimistic in the way I once was, to think that love is enough to redeem every wrong. But there is a shadow now, and it is no small thing. I see the blood on his cuff once, twice, until the red is a stain I cannot ignore. He notices my stare, and in the quiet that follows, reaches out to take my hand like someone who needs proof he's not entirely monstrous. For the first time, love and fear live in the same room without the pretense of courtesy. I fall asleep with the memory of his fist moving fast, with the smell of gun oil clinging to the fabric of his coat, and with the image of the red like a pulsing bruise under my skin. He keeps his promise that week. Men who had been at the gallery stop calling. The alley is quieter, and the city seems superficially back to its usual hum. But when I brush his sleeve and find the faint, almost invisible slick of blood along the seam, the warmth of his palm feels like both home and hazard. I bury my face against him, and for a second the world is as it was before the glass broke. And then I remember, with a clarity that is like cold water, that there are parts of him that are not mine to salvage. I love him anyway, which feels to me now like an admission of complicity. The realization sits in my throat like a bitter pill I swallowed without thinking. The revelation slides into my life the way fog slides over the harbor. Almost invisible at first, then a thickening presence that makes the edges of everything uncertain. I do not expect it. I am folding a stack of brochures when the door chimes, and a man steps into the gallery who is not a collector nor a gossip. He is older, with salt and pepper hair combed back, a lined face that suggests both a kindness practiced over years and the kind of restraint that comes from a life of watching. "Good afternoon," he says, his voice a gentle instrument. He wears a coat that looks like it has seen many winters. "Is Elena here?" My fingers fold the brochure like a nervous tick. "Yes, do you—" He smiles at my name as if it is a thing he's known before. "My name is Victor. I'm an old friend of the Moretti family. The claim lands like a pebble in still water. Moretti is a name on a door I never opened to know, beyond the rent papers and a landlord's perfunctory nod. I feel the ripple under my skin. "You knew my—" I begin, but the man's eyes hold a steadiness that makes me stop. There are photographs in the frame behind him, stale images that look like family relics. He looks like someone who has memories cataloged like coins. "I knew your parents," he says. "I was a friend to them when the city was kinder, and when families kept their own counsel. Might I speak with you, privately?" There is a tone, like the soft turning of a key, that opens a door in me I have kept bolted. I lead him to the small office at the back. The room smells of paper and turpentine and old polish. He watches me sit with a care that is almost ceremonial, and then he does something that makes my throat close. He reaches into his coat and produces a small silver locket on a chain. The metal is dulled by time, and when he opens it, a photograph stares up at me. A woman with high cheekbones and a smile I have never seen. But something in the curve of her mouth is mine. "Where did you get that?" My voice is small and tight. "She wore it," Victor says. "Your mother." "Elena, I am sorry for what I must tell you. It is not easy information." My chair feels suddenly like a stage. "Tell me," I say, and I do not know if I am asking or commanding. "There was a fire at a house outside town," he begins, his voice moving like someone unspooling a long-held tale. "Years ago, they called it an accident. The authorities were slow, and the night was loud with other troubles. Your family, your mother and father, were taken in a way the papers never fully explained. The room narrows. The locket is a small sun in my hand. I remember nothing," I say. "Memory is silt that refuses to move under pressure. I have always had a gap, a blankness where faces should be. But I have lived with it like an ache." "You were young," Victor says. "You were found by a woman who could not keep you. I took you in for a time before circumstances made it impossible." He watches my face with an intensity that suggests guilt, hiding under the guise of patience. There were things that were not spoken then. Alliances, debts. I was not able to protect everyone. "Why are you telling me now?" My voice is hard. The question tastes like suspicion. "Because now you are entangled with the Valerios," he says simply. "And I have grown old, Elena. I have had nights where I wake up to the feeling of mistakes on my hands. You deserve the truth about where you came from." I think of Dante's hands. I think of the red on his cuff. I think of his kisses that tried to seal the night like a bandage. The world spins as if on a different axis. Victor slides a folder across the desk. Inside are yellowed newspaper clippings, a photocopy of a worn birth certificate, and a note in handwriting, as deliberate and old as the rest of him. There are names I don't know, fragments of addresses, a blurred photograph of a house that looks like something out of a fever dream. The words Moretti and Valerio sit on the page like an old feud. You're saying? My mouth is dry. I am saying things were not as they seemed, Victor says. There was a conflict, a decision made in smoke and money. Men with weight decided that the Moretti family had to be removed from a position that made them dangerous. That is all I can say clearly without giving you things that might put you in danger now. Danger. The word should tighten something in me. Instead, it unspools into a variety of terrors. Some I can name, some I cannot. I feel the ground where my childhood should be step away from me. Why show me this now? I demand. Because the truth feels like a live wire and I am afraid of touching it. Because you love a Valerio. Victor's eyes are not cruel. They are simply factual. And you need to know the shape of that thing. I think of Dante's voice, and how he held me after the attack, and how he spoke of regret, as if it were a currency he paid every night. The idea that my family and his were tangled like threads in a cloth makes my stomach drop. You could be lying, I say, because the possibility that a man could carry a locket and stories is not proof enough to topple the safe scaffolding of my life. Victor smiles sadly. I expected you to say that. He slides another photograph across the desk. This one is crisper, newer, a face I recognize with a slow, biting familiarity. It is Marco Valerio, his jaw set like a closed gate, and beside him, smaller and shadowed, is Dante, younger, lean, the same line of mouth that now softens when he looks at me. How do you know? The question comes from a place I do not recognize. Because I have watched the city for a long time, Victor says. Because I have debts that don't repay. And because I have been a good man in terrible times and a terrible man in good times. I am telling you this because you deserve to choose with full knowledge. The words settle, but do not land. Knowledge is heavy, and it shifts the axis of how I feel everything. I leave Victor's office with the locket burning like a small sun in my pocket. I walk the streets in a slow, commentary-less daze. The city hums, indifferent. The lemon trees pushing up from the courtyard like green questions. At home, I press the locket to my mouth because it is the only place that feels sacred, and I do not know how to reconcile the fact of the small silver heart with the man who has saved me with a violence that now looks different against the backdrop of this new revelation. I do not tell Dante immediately. I am not ready for the way he will look at me. Perhaps like a man accused, or like a man who has always known the cost of his family's reach. I'm not sure I could stand the way his eyes would search my face for the consequence like a dealer reading a card. Instead, I tell Sophia in halting sentences, and she listens with the practical, blunt thing she always is. Go to him, she says. Ask him. Don't let this fester into a thing that eats you, so I do. I go because I want answers, not because I trust the men who keep the city's secrets. I find Dante on a terrace that smells of charcoal and sea. He is alone, and the city spreads before him like a secret he cannot stop deciphering. When he sees me, he does not stand. He folds his hands together and watches me come, like someone who is preparing for an honest conversation. Victor was here, I say, without preamble. His face does not change much, but it is like a tide behind a rock. There are small tidal motions you cannot see from a distance. Victor tells stories, he says. The phrase is light, but there is a set to his shoulders that smells of restraint. He showed me a locket, I say. A photo of my mother. He says my family was gone. Dante finishes for me. The word lands like a stone in my lap. You knew, I say, though the question is a howl. I knew of the strife, he replies. His voice is careful. I was not there for the night, Elena. I was not the one who set the plan in motion. There is a pause. There were things done by people in this family I would not defend. There are loyalties that bleed. Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me? The way the accusation flakes on my tongue feels righteous and helpless at once. Because I thought knowledge was a weapon best kept sheathed until necessary, he says. Because I didn't want to hurt you with a truth that might not be the whole truth. Half-truths are cruel, I say softly. They let you wear a life that isn't real. He reaches out and takes my hand in a touch that is both familiar and frayed. I wanted to protect you from being forced into something you didn't choose. Instead, You chose for me, I answer. The words are small shards. You chose to hide the thing that matters most. Dante's jaw tightens, and for a moment I see him as a man who has been boxed into decisions that never felt like his own. I did not hide everything, he says. And the fracturing between us makes the air between our palms cold. But there are things you should know at the right time. I am sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I laugh, a sound that is too sharp. Is time an excuse now? Is that what you call it? He says nothing. The silence between us is loud and full of questions that neither of us knows how to answer. I leave him then, because leaving feels like an act of control, and I clutch the locket like a talisman. The city is enormous and indifferent, and suddenly full of people who might have wanted my family gone for reasons that will look ugly in the daylight. That night I do not sleep. Memory and possibility twist in my head. Victor's words echo like a cage. The more I think about it, the more I feel that the world that loved me as an orphan is not the small life I had built. It is a network of debts and decisions, and I am in the middle of it, like a bloom at the center of a viper's nest. The next morning, Victor returns with a different request. If you choose to know everything, he says quietly, you must be prepared to act on it. Knowledge without action becomes rot. The implication sits on my tongue like poison. I look at him, at the small lines etched around his eyes, at the way his mouth tightens. He is not the villain the city paints. He is someone who has been scalded by time and wants to right what he believes is wrong. The locket against my skin is hot with the weight of decisions to come. When I walk home, I pass a bakery where the bread is still warm and the air is redolent with yeast. I buy a loaf, and I press it to my chest because the act is small and human. In that moment, I see my reflection in the window, my face pale, eyes wide, hair undone, and I do not recognize the woman looking back. I realize then that the path forward is a line I will have to draw myself, toward Dante, who loves me and whose family might have taken mine, or toward the man who offers the past as fact and the future as an armory. I am aware now that decisions are not always moral maps. They are sometimes trade-offs in a ledger of survival. I tuck the locket back into the folds of my blouse, and I decide, with a small stab of resolve that tastes of iron, that I will find out what the truth is, no matter the cost. Confrontation is not cinematic in a way the movies make it look. It is messy. It is a series of small moments that accumulate until someone cannot breathe under their weight. My confrontation with Dante is that an accumulation of small truths, omissions, and the aching knowledge that I have been kept in the dark. I come to his villa with the locket in my palm and the folder Victor gave me under my arm. I do not knock. I know how he keeps the back door ajar for me. I know the pattern of his life like a rough map. When he sees me in the hall, he does not smile. He closes the distance between us with the economy of someone who knows there is no rehearsal for this scene. You knew, I say before he can speak, because to wait would be to let the silence do the damage. What do you mean? His face is carefully blank, but the lines around his mouth deepen with tension. I throw the folder on his dining table. Don't pretend you don't know the names in here. Victor showed me. He showed me that the Moretti family, my family, were not random victims. They were written in a ledger. Dante picks up a photograph, fingers trembling just enough for me to see that the man I love is not unscarred by what he reads. It's messy, he says. It's all of us. Family, business, survival. You call murder messy? The word tears out of me like something flayed. The room seems too bright, the sunlight an accusation. I tell you things when I can, he says. I couldn't tell you everything because some truths would have put you in immediate danger. How many lies is acceptable when you are the one lying? I ask. The locket is warm in my hand, and I turn it in the light until the silver gleams. He moves toward me then, a gentle motion that should have calmed me. I never wanted to hurt you, he says, and it is honest and inadequate. I thought I was sparing you. You were deciding for me, I say. That's not your right. His eyes flash, hurt and anger braided together. Do you think I take these choices lightly? Do you think there are not nights I wake up wishing I'd done things differently? I thought you were honest, I say. The thought feels like a breaking glass. I thought the man who held my face and said sorry in the alley was the man who would tell me the whole story. And if the whole story would have made you run? He steps closer until he is inches from me. Would you have hidden at the first truth? Or would you have been used as a pawn while others decided what to do with you? You used me, I shoot back, every syllable a sting. I loved you, he says then, the shout tearing like a fissure. The sound of it makes both of us startle. I loved you enough to want to keep you safe. I loved you enough to let you be who you were without the burden of my sins. The confession lands like a bomb. I do not know if I should be grateful or furious. Love is not a shield, I think wildly. Love is an explanation, and now I am asked to accept the explanation in place of truth. I won't be protected by deception, I say finally. If you wanted me to be safe, you should have brought me in. Let me choose. He looks at me then with something that is almost pleading. You cannot choose if you do not know the stakes. I know enough, I say. The resolve in my voice surprises me. I fold my arms and let the solidity of anger become armor. I am leaving. I see him unravel then in a way that is both jagged and very human. He reaches for me, fingers brushing my shoulder. Don't make me beg. I do not stay for the begging. I walk out and the world outside is loud with birds and the mundane sound of life that goes on, indifferent to the ruptures inside small rooms. I call Sophia and tell her I am coming home. She answers with support and a kind of blunt practicality I have come to lean on. Victor is not a saint, she says. He's been around darkness longer than he should have. You need to be careful. Can you stay with me tonight? I ask. Of course. Her voice is steady like an anchor. When I get home, I sleep a little, and then something in me breaks in a way that is not visible, but changes the architecture of who I am. The next morning, I meet Victor at a small cafe that smells of roasted beans and the chalk of old news. He is not unkind. He has a patience that suggests long practice. Are you going to do what you must? He asks. What must I do? The question tastes of iron. Learn how to not be a victim, he says. You have been a child in adult conflicts. If you intend to survive in a world that trades in cruelty, you must become a shape that is not easily bent. It is a brutal sentence, and yet something in it feels like a map. Victor's silver hair catches the morning sun. If I say yes, I say slowly, what will it mean? Training, lessons, a way of thinking that is not romantic. You will learn to read men like you read paintings. You will learn how to hold a gun and not let your hands betray you. You will learn how to move so that no one sees you coming. You will learn to make choices. I think of the man who saved me, hands bloody, and of the man who gave me a locket and stories. The world feels split between them, a line I have to walk that might cut me. I feel my heart moving in the shape of decision. I will do it, I tell him. The words are solemn. Victor smiles, but there is a melancholy that folds the edges of his mouth. We begin now, he says. The training is a slow, practical kind of violence. It is not grand gestures. It is repetition until muscle memory replaces reflex. I learn to stand with my feet shoulder-width apart and hold a gun with a hand that does not shake. Victor is a patient instructor in small, brutal increments. He warms the pistol in my hands and explains the balance and the weight. How a gun is not just an implement, but a negotiation with fate. You will not become cold, he tells me one evening, as we sit with the windows open and the city clattering below. You will become precise. There is a difference. I practice for hours until calluses form on my fingers and the muscles in my arms remember the arc of discipline. I learn to move quietly, how to step on the balls of my feet like a cat, how to make my breath small, and even when the world asks for noise. Victor teaches me how to notice breath patterns, the tilt of shoulders, the way a hand flexes at the sight of a lie. He shows me how to read a person's gait and see anger before it becomes words. It is a schooling in the currency of survival. I think I will harden. Instead, I feel something more complicated, a new clarity. The soft parts of me, my laughter, my habit of pressing my thumb to a seam in a book, do not disappear. They fold into a new design, like a dress altered to fit a different walk. The world does not stop being beautiful to me. It becomes dangerous and gorgeous at once. At night, when my hands ache from training, I think of Dante. I think of his regret and the way he held me after the gallery. I also think of Victor and his insistence on truth. Two men, two sets of hands, shaping the edges of who I will be. Dante finds me halfway through this process. when my wrists have the faint memory of tightening exercises and my movements have grown more deliberate. He watches me train in silence the first time, eyes like a child witnessing the ritual of a mother he cannot save. There is no anger in his look, only a pained pride and something else I cannot name. "You're learning to fight," he says quietly. His voice is brittle with feeling. "I am learning to not be a thing to be decided," I answer. The statement is no small thing. It is a kind of reclamation. He approaches me slowly and takes my hands in his. The contact is not possessive or soft. It is the meeting of two people who know the world can both harm and hold. "I wanted to shield you," he confesses. "I thought I could make your life easier by taking the ugliness on myself." "You didn't give me the option to choose how to live with it," I say. The ache in my chest is a bruise, and he fingers it with the gentleness of someone who knows he broke something. He leans forward and rests his forehead against mine, a small, fragile bridge. "Teach me how to be different with you," he whispers. "Teach me how to let you choose and still be in your life." I look at him, at the man who is ruined and saved, and I think about trust as a thing we negotiate. I have learned to aim a gun. I am not sure how to aim my heart again without it shattering. "I will try," I say, because the truth is that the person who sits there with his hands on mine is the same one who has read the map of me in the way only obsession learns to do. He is the man I love, complicated and culpable and aching. Training continues, and with each day the edges of me grow less pliable. I move with a new economy of steps. I find the language of warning in a man's posture, and I learn how to make decisions that are not deferred to others. Victor nods with slow approval, and Dante watches with something like reverence. We are three people stitched into the same wound. A man who tried to protect me by concealing truth. A man who offers answers and a path to action. And me, standing at the seam between them, learning to hold my own map. The breaking point was not one moment. It was a series of small fractures that made me a woman who will not simply be led anymore. When I finally point the gun at a target, when I feel the recoil under my palm and the small, terrible competence of a loaded weapon, I do not become the person Victor warned I might. I become someone who has learned the worth of her own choices. The line between rage and resolve is narrow, and walking it teaches me that vengeance is a poor shelter, but that agency is a tool. By the time I return to Dante after weeks of training, my hands are steadier and my heart is in a language I'm still learning to speak. I am not the same girl who once pressed her face to lemon-scented pillows and believed in love as a simple shelter. I am something remade, scarred, yes, but with a spine grown from knowledge. Dante meets me at the door like a man waiting for a verdict. We look at each other and there is no easy reconciliation. We are both changed by the truth we have unearthed and the paths we chose to walk. He reaches for my hand, and this time, because I have learned that consent is not a thing to be assumed, I let him take it on my terms. "What now?" he asks, voice quiet with a vulnerability that makes the city's lights outside seem apologetic. "Now," I say, and the word has weight. "Now we decide together." I go back to him like a woman walking into a house she knows is built on rotten beams. Because sometimes you return to the thing that scares you most in order to prove you're still standing. The Valerio villa is dusk and honeyed light, the sort of place that makes the world look like a photograph you could hang and stare at until your eyes went numb. He meets me on the terrace, a cigarette between his fingers, the last orange of the sun gilding the line of his cheek. He smells, impossibly, like cedar and clean linen and the faint copper of the night before. For a second, the faith I practiced in the months of training loosens and wants to slide back into the soft fold of him. "You came," he says, and there is relief, red like music, that I hear even when my chest is a fist. He does not ask me where I have been. He does not ask what I have learned. He only offers a cigarette and a look that carries an apology heavy as a stone. "I came to talk," I say, which is both true and careful, to see if we can find a place to stand without tearing each other into pieces. He studies me for a long time, as if cataloging the differences. My hands a little stronger, my stance a little more measured, the way my eyes do not fall away when his land on mine. "You look different," he says finally, and it is the softest of eulogies for the girl I used to be. Victor taught me how to stand, I answer. The words feel like armor. He taught me how to read a man before he speaks. Dante's mouth thins. Is that a threat? No. My laugh is dry. It's survival. He reaches for me then, and the motion is involuntary on both of our parts. A man who cannot help the way he touches the person he loves. His fingertips find the hollow of my throat and linger as if memorizing. The touch is both claim and comfort. I let it be because the part of me that fell in love with him is not a naive thing. It's the stubborn, ragged part that knows how to forgive in order to survive. I do not want martyrdom. I want truth. Eat, he says, and leads me inside. The dinner is quiet with wine and soft conversation masquerading as normalcy. He asks about the gallery. I ask him about couriers. We trade small balms like people pretending that a scab will heal if it is not picked. There is an intimacy in the mundane. The way he reaches over the table and tucks a loose curl behind my ear. The way his thumb finds the seam of my palm and draws slow circles until my shoulders loosen. We speak of 1,000 inconsequential things, because that is how two people keep catastrophe at bay. After dinner, he stands and says, "Walk with me." There is a familiar path through the garden. Lavender that scrapes the shins when you are not careful. A low fountain that catches the moon in a cup. A statue whose eyes look like they know secrets. He walks with a gentleness that is almost comical given the evenings we have weathered together. I watch his profile the way one watches a ship that could capsize at any wrong wind. When we reach his study, he pauses and turns to me. "Will you come in?" he asks, and the room beyond is dim and lined with books and the faint ghost of gun oil in the air. He closes the door behind us with a softness that suggests he is trying to keep the rest of the house and the world from bleeding in. I step into the room and breathe it. Leather, paperwork, a hint of something old and polished. This is the geography of his life. A map of signatures and ledgers. It is where he is most himself, and also where the things we do not say sit like quiet furniture. I stand near his desk, hands in my pockets because I am trying to look casual and failing spectacularly. He pours us both a small measure of whiskey, and the liquid is a sun that settles in my stomach. He watches me sip, the candlelight catching the planes of his face. "What is it you want?" he asks, a simple question that suddenly widens into the size of a canyon. "Truth," I say. Not the small truths, the ones that are heavy and pungent. I want the truth about that night. About my family, his jaw works. For a second, I think he will come clean. The world will fall into neat pieces and we will pick them up, glue them, call it a life. Instead, he steps around the desk and pulls a drawer open. The scraping sound is like a fingernail along bone. He takes out a thin manila folder and places it on the desk with intentional calm. "I found this," he says quietly. "A while ago. I put it away because I didn't want to bend the shape of your reality before you were ready." My fingers want to reach for the folder, but I keep my hands still. Victor taught me to keep my hands where they can't be used against me. "Let me see," I say, and the demand is mild, almost professional. He pushes it toward me. Inside are records, shipping manifests, a list of addresses, a page with a name circled in red. Moretti residence, 13 Lazari Lane. There are also notes, scratched in a hurried hand, confirm, night, no witnesses. Final approval, D. Valerio. The paper trembles in my hands like a living thing. The initials are there in his own careful scrawl. My breath fogs in the air. I feel something unclench inside me, and then tighten in a different shape. The sense that the world I thought I lived in was merely a room in someone else's house. "You kept this?" I ask. My voice is flat, the way glass is flat before it fractures. "I kept it because I didn't want you to be tempted by truth before you were whole enough to hold it," he says. "I thought," he breaks off. The attempt to explain is clumsy and raw. "I thought I was protecting you." "You signed off on it." The words are simple and lethal. "You approved the plan. We made decisions," he tries. "There were negotiations and misdirections. Sometimes a leader signs documents without meaning the consequence of every line." "You lied to me," I say. "You let me be small and ignorant while you were part of what took my life." He steps toward me, the man who is both the destroyer and the savior, and cups my face in a hand that still feels like home. "You have to believe me when I say," his voice wavers, "I did not know that night would have your family in it." The sentence falls like a stone in a pool, and for a long time the ripples are all that exists. I want to believe him. I want to swallow the explanation because my heart, exhausted from training and truth, is not sure it can process another betrayal. But the facts on the page are not feelings. They are ink and paper and the record of action. You expected me to forgive you because you claim ignorance? I say, the sentence small and precise. You want me to love the same hands that authorized it because the words make you sound less culpable? He shakes his head, a sorrowful motion. No, the refusal is a plea. I wanted to keep you safe. I wanted to keep you from being dragged into our war. He stops, and there is a brittle edge to his hunger for contrition. I loved you. I still do. I laugh then. A sound that is more air than mirth. Love is not an eraser. He takes a step back as if the laughter struck him, and there is a softness in his gaze that turns my stomach. I know, he says, but love has made me make wrong choices. If I could undo it, you can't undo what was done. The sting is an honest thing. You can't give me back the family I never got to grow up with. You can't give me the childhood I didn't get. You can't make men alive again. He looks at me with a hunger I know intimately now, the need to be forgiven, to be absolved by my hands, by my voice. I thought that if I kept certain things from you, I could keep you whole. I was wrong. You were wrong in ways I can't pretend to understand. My voice breaks on the last word, and I want, suddenly and horribly, to run, to flee the room where I am wholly seen and wholly betrayed. Instead, I steady myself. You are not the only one, I say, and the admission is not only a fact but also a weapon. Victor's name hangs in the space between us, a shadowed figure who taught me to aim. Dante's face hardens then, not with malice but with a concentrated, painful clarity. Victor has his own reasons, he says. He has been in the wrong places for too long. He has a vendetta I did not condone. Then he used me, I say flatly. The thought is filigreed with something like fury. He trained me to be the sort of woman who could be asked to do the unthinkable. He did, Dante admits. And I did not stop him because confronting Victor would have exposed things that would have dragged you into the center of our family business. You did not stop him. I repeat the phrase like a litany. The hands that once soothed me now tremble a fraction. You let me be his instrument. Dante's eyes are suddenly lined with grief in a way that is as human as it is maddening. I loved you, he says again, because that is what he knows to speak when every other language is weapons. You loved me and killed pieces of me at the same time. The sentence is an accusation and a confession bundled together. I walk to the window and press my palm to the glass. The city below is an indifferent scatter of light. My reflection looks foreign, eyes ringed with a tiredness that was not there before. He comes up behind me and rests his chin on my shoulder. His breath fans the hollow of my ear, and everything inside of me flips between molten pity and a cold resolution I have learned from target practice. Tell me what you want, he whispers. The voice is small. Tell me how to make the shape right. I turn to face him, to look at the man who folded himself into my life the way twilight folds the day. I want the truth, I say. I want every ledger, every map, every name. I want to know if Marco was the one who orchestrated this, or if there are other hands that reached in. Marco. He pauses. The name is a fisher. Marco has always had the teeth to bite first and ask questions later. He is cruel where I am, calculating. He was a part of the council that wanted Moretti removed. I feel the room tilt. Was he the one who ordered the massacre? He was the architect, Dante says slowly. He proposed the means. I gave an approval in the fog of everything. Agreements, threats, the calculus of power. I thought the strike would be surgical, targeted toward enemies who would harm the family. I did not know the Morettis would be inside. His confession is not an absolution. It is a wound that we both now hold. Victor lied to me, I say, the truth a bitter taste. He told me it was the Valerios who did this, and led me into learning skills to take revenge. He used you, Dante says simply. The simplicity is a dirge, and he used pain as bait. I wanted to be whole again by taking blood, I whisper. I thought vengeance would rebuild me. He draws back from me then. The space between us is a new geography. You don't have to rebuild yourself with the ruins of other people. Maybe I don't want to be saved from my rage, I say. The confession is honest and raw. Maybe I want to direct it. You will direct it and lose more than you will gain, he says, a warning. There are consequences that go far beyond us. I look at him, and the man I love is also the man who holds culpability. For a moment, I wonder if this is the kind of choice that will define me. Whether to join hands with him in the attempt to stop the cycle, or to push forward into the dark until the topography of power is reshaped by my hand. Then don't stop me from the search, I say finally. If Marco is guilty, I want him found. If Victor used me, he will burn for it, but let the truth be the arbiter, not stories chosen to comfort. Dante studies me, an unreadable map, then nods. You will have the papers, he says, and you will have me. The words are both pledge and threat. I do not know if I can trust them, but I accept them the way you accept a bandage that keeps a wound from spouting. Later, as night thickens and the villa sleeps, we lie together, and our bodies fit in ways that are more promise than sanctuary. His hands are careful, and his kisses are the thing that keeps me dizzy. He traces the scar along my jaw, an old line I have learned to forget, and whispers, I will make this right. I listen and let his hands move over me, because the part of me that loves him is larger than the part that keeps score. For tonight, the revelation waits on the dresser in the manila folder. The truth will unfold tomorrow like a blade. I press my ear to his chest and hear the uneven beat of heart and regret, the two rhythms welded together in one person. Outside, the city breathes. Inside, we lie like two sleepers on a cliff, both loving and dangerous, both culpable and injured. The trap is not a net someone sets for you. Sometimes it is the way the past folds into your hands and asks you to name it. I will name it, and when I do, the sound will be loud enough for everyone who hides in shadow to hear. I take the folder home with my palms tight around the paper edges, as if gripping it will keep me from floating away. The villa recedes behind me like a dream you know is false when you wake. My apartment smells like lemon peel and old books, and the locket against my skin feels like a somber sun. I set the folder on my table and stare at the name circled in red until the ink blurs. Truth is a very intimate sort of violence. I try to sleep and fail. The city rains a slow, patient sound against my window. My mind is full of calculus. If Marco is the architect, what was Dante's exact role? Did he sign with intent or with the guile of a man who thinks he can steer an avalanche? I have trained my hands to be steady under pressure. Tonight, I train my heart to be steady under betrayal. Sometime after midnight, when the city's hum has thinned to something like a sigh, I make a decision that tastes like old iron. I go to Dante's villa. I tell myself it is because I want to speak with him, to demand clarity. The truth is simpler and crueler. I want to see the man who loved me up close. I want to feel whether his hands are the same that authorized a death. The gate is open because he knows me, and because in his world, there are doors that remain unlocked for the convenience of affection. I move through rooms that smell of cedar and cared-for leather, tiptoeing because everyone in me has become a shadow. At his study door, the house is quiet. I can hear the tick of a clock, a slow metronome counting the hours we have lost. His silhouette is at the desk when I step into the room, hunched slightly, a lamp haloing his head like a saint, and like a man in confession. He looks up when I clear my throat. The surprise flickers in his features and then smooths into the familiar mask he wears for me. Elena, he says, and it is both greeting and question. No speeches, I say. I hold the folder up like a talisman. I have read. I want the truth, he swallows. You have the right papers. You could have told me. The accusation is a whip. You could have told me and let me choose. He rises, the lamplight throwing the planes of his cheek into a geography I have learned intimately. I said I was sparing you, he says. I thought I was doing right. You thought, I repeat. You thought. Thought doesn't return people. The air between us is seasonal, hot in accusation, then cold with the brush of regret. He moves towards me slowly as if each step is a negotiation. There is nuance, he says. There are meetings where things are said and not heard. Nuance, I echo. My voice is small and precise. That is not how families die. We do not touch for a long moment. The only sound is the city beyond the windows and the soft rustle of paper when I shift the folder open to the page where my family's name is circled. The ink sits like a verdict. The first thing he admits is the thing that will always haunt the edges of what I become. "I signed a paper," he says. His hand lifts and then drops as if to physically relinquish whatever authority the signature carried. I thought it was meant to target men who threatened our family's operations, smugglers, men who would sell our names and ruin what we had. We were given misinformation. The plan was to hurt a rival cell, not an innocent family. He looks at me with an honesty that is almost unbearable. "I did not know the Morettis were inside that house." "Did you believe him?" I ask, voice thin. "Did you read the address? Did you ask who would be there at night?" "There were nights when we did not get all the facts," he says. "There were men in corners who fed us false lines. There were debts that required decisive steps. I knew it was dangerous. I did not know it would be them." He searches my eyes for something. Mercy, perhaps, or a shorthand for the reason he is not the same as the thing he authorized. I thought if I authorized a strike in the right way, surgically, then the world would be simplified. Surgically, I repeat, and the word splinters like glass. Surgical blows are eviscerations when maps are wrong. He flinches as if the words cut him. "I am sorry," he says simply. "The apology is not enough. Apologies cannot unscream a house full of people. Was Marco involved?" I press. "The ledger, the names. Everything points to someone with more appetite for blood, someone who delights in the theatrics of a power play." "Yes," Dante says. "Marco was the one who pushed for an example to be made. He wanted to scare people off. He thought the Morettis were symbolic, an enemy with a name that would send a message. He is the architect," I say. The thought of Marco's cold pleasure turns my stomach. "Then we find him and make him pay." Dante's hand lifts to my cheek, and the touch is trembling. "You're not a weapon." It is a plea that runs deeper than a promise. I do not want you to be used as ammunition in a personal war. "You already were," I say. The sentence is not a question to be debated. It is a fact. Suddenly the air changes. His phone buzzes on the desk with a tone that is both modern and ominous. He glances at it and his face becomes a map of bad moments. "Listen," he says. "There are things moving tonight. Marco's men are stirring. He is not going to submit to being discovered quietly. My training, Victor's lessons in movement and reading, shifts my body into a predator's readiness. Something in me tightens like a coiled spring. Marco's name carries the taste of copper and danger. Stay, Dante says, the word not a suggestion. I will take care of this. No, I say, and the decision is a blade. I am not staying where decisions about my family are being made without me. I am going with you. He looks at me as if I am a riddle he should not have to solve. You cannot know what will happen, he says. I know what will happen if I don't go. I cut in. I will be a ghost in my own life. There is a long breath. He reaches for me and I let him hold my hand. The warmth of his palm is familiar. The night is suddenly very small. We leave the villa side by side, his suit a dark smear beside mine. The world outside is velvet and dangerous. Cars slide down the street like black fish. Men move in shadows like thoughts. The air tastes like rust. When we arrive at the meeting place, an abandoned warehouse whose bones are the architecture of decisions, the smell of oil and old rope hits me like a slap. Marco is there before us, as if he wanted to welcome us into his theater. He stands tall, his shirt open at the throat, an easy cruelty in the way he smiles as we enter. His men are like a Greek chorus lining the rafters, watching us as if in a mass. Dante, Marco calls, voice smooth as silk over steel. You have a beautiful life. It's a pity some must always be asked to choose. I feel Dante's fingers close around mine then, hard enough to anchor me. Marco's gaze slides to me, and I know, in the instant the words unspool in the air, that the man who engineered the massacre enjoys the spectacle of pain. Is this your pet project? Marco asks. He smiles in a way that makes him look like a snake sunning itself. The little Moretti comes back to play. How poignant. You don't know anything about her, Dante says, and I can hear the steel threading his voice. Oh, I know her name. Names have a delicious way of being useful. Marco's laugh drifts like smoke. You signed for the operation, Dante. You are the father of the idea, whatever faint attempts at denial you offer. Men sign papers. Men die, the room tightens. I feel the weight of all the things that have been said and unsaid. Marco steps closer, eyes slitted. You trained a child to use a gun. That is an interesting touch. The barb curls like a knife. You're hiding behind your theatrics, I say, and the sound of my voice surprises me with its rawness. You used my family as a message. Marco's smile does not waver. We used them to make a point. He leans forward so close that his breath brushes my face. You can kill me if you like, little bird, but who will catch you when the world collapses? The men around him laugh, the sound like dry twigs. My training hums a cold, methodical song through my veins. I feel the fold of my resolve like leather being tightened. Dante's hand slips from mine and finds a pistol at his hip. For a terrible second, the scene is only the choreography of colliding forces. What do you want? Dante asks, not taking his eyes off Marco. Marco's grin deepens. I want the Valerio name to be a temper that others are afraid to test. I wanted Moretti to be a warning. What we have here is a domestic incident. 2 families with a grudge. Make it neat. He tips his head. Or we can make it messy. You will stop this, I say, and my voice is small but certain. You will stop using people as instruments. You think yourself so righteous? Marco sneers. You, who were trained to kill, think you can decide for everyone. He laughs, and the chorus of men behind him echo like a savage forest. Dante steps forward. This ends tonight. I will give you the names. We will end the vendetta. Marco's laugh is a sound like rocks tumbling. If you hand me names, I will have less reason to act. But I think I prefer the spectacle. He clicks his fingers, and a man steps forward like a shadow that has taken human form. I am not naive about theater and intimidation. I have been schooled in both. The man moves towards us with a grin that could be a razor. For a fraction of a second, my breath freezes because I think the night will close in on us, and there will be no rise. Then Dante moves like a counterweight. He does not draw his gun. He moves first toward the man, hands outstretched, not to touch but to unbalance. A shot rings out with startling, dumb clarity. Someone screams. Chaos blooms like fire. I do the only thing I have trained to do. I find cover. I breathe as lightly as possible. I find a vantage, and I watch. My heart is a metronome. The world reduces to target, to movement, to survival. I forget love for a sharp, cold second and remember only the shape of reality. Bullets, the smell of gunpowder, the metallic spray that tastes of old grief. When the smoke clears, bodies are on the ground and blood is in the corners like witness. Marco is on his knees, the grin gone from his face, Dante's eyes full of the same ordered violence that saved the gallery. Marco's men lie in various states of motionlessness. I move toward him, toward the man whose name was circled in my folder, and see the life leaking from him like a river that refuses to stop. He looks at me then, and his eyes are terrible with the knowledge that his theater has turned into a trap he never thought he would be caught in. You, Marco breathes, and the sentence is a dying thing. You built a house of bones, I say, and now it collapses. He laughs once, surprised, and then the light leaves him. I find my gun with my hands steady, my throat hollow, and the world is a slate of consequence. I shoot him because the training told me to make the shot true. The recoil is a familiar, sudden pain, like calculation becoming action. When it's done, I stand in the residue of a night that is both victory and ruin. Dante is at my side, hands searching me for injury, for proof that I am still whole. His mouth finds mine with an intensity I have never felt, equal parts relief and something like grief. He kisses me like a penitent man claiming absolution, and I let him because grief and passion are the same currency in this life. You killed him, he whispers against my lips. His breath is hot and shaky. You tried to make a life that used others, I answer. You used my name as a tool and thought it would cut clean. We are both stained with red. The truth is spoken in the echo of dropped bodies and the flush of adrenaline. We hold each other in the wreckage, and for an impossible, fragile moment it feels like the world might be something we can rebuild together. Not on lies, but on memory and the slow welding of two people who have hurt one another. Then Victor appears from the shadows, his face a mask of something like grief and triumph, and everything tilts again. He stands over Marco's body and smiles that small, hollow smile of a man who believes he has won something. "You did well," Victor says to me, his voice soft as dust. "You did what needed doing." A coldness slides through my bones. I will not be praised for the act of killing when it is used as a token to someone else's chessboard. "Victor," I say, the name a blade. He turns to me like he's amused. "You were made for this, Elena. You were given hands that could finish what broken people began." "You used me," I say, simple and terrible. He inclines his head. "Perhaps, but sometimes the world needs people willing to cut away rot." Dante's jaw tightens. "You manipulated a woman who lost her family," he says. "You taught her to aim so you could point her at us." Victor shrugs, an odd lightness coloring his shoulders. "There are debts to be paid. The past is a ledger. My gun feels heavy in my hands like a loophole in fate." Victor smiles, and the smile is a seal of the man who believes he is above pain. "You have done well, Elena. There will be peace now." There is a terrible emptiness in me at the sound of his voice. "Peace built on lies is not peace," I say. "My voice is an animal." Victor's face cools. "You will understand," he murmurs. One day is a promise that feels like a lie." I look at Dante, and he meets my eyes with an urgency that is wordless. He steps forward and takes Victor's shoulders. "You taught her to be a weapon in a war that was not hers," he says in a voice that is both accusation and sorrow. "You used a child of victims to finish your vendetta." Victor's eyes glitter with a predator's intelligence. "Sometimes monsters must be used to kill other monsters," he says. "The world narrows to two men and one woman whose life has been used as currency. I know then what I must do." Victor's hands have the taste of old smoke and older lies. He has justified cruelty as repair, and in that rationalization I cannot live. I raise my gun not in fury but in the quiet assurance of a person who has learned the weight of consequence. Victor's eyes search mine, and they flit for a fraction of a second to regret. He smiles, arrogant and small. "Don't," Dante says, hand outstretched. His voice is raw. "You don't get to stop me," I say. "The voice is mine, stripped and true. You used me. You taught me to kill. You put a locket in my hand and told me who to hate. You gave me a map and expected me to follow it without question." Victor's smile thins. The men around shift like fish sensing blood. I aim and I do not hesitate. My training hums through my bones, and the shot is clean and true. Victor falls, surprised by the finality of his own equation. Silence falls like snow. For a heartbeat, the world is only breath and the metallic taste of what we have done. Dante collapses to his knees and holds me as if to stop me from moving, from killing maybe one more ghost. "What have you done?" he asks, voice a broken thing. "What I had to," I answer. The statement is not righteous. It is simply the truth as it stands. We are both marred by the acts of the night. Blood-slick and awful and honest. We leave the warehouse with the dawn like a bruise across the sky. The city wakes slow and indifferent. I am hollow with grief and something else. An odd, heavy clarity. For a moment I think I have ended the ledger. Then I remember the names still unspoken. The multitudes of hands that touch a life in secret. Dante holds me as we stand outside in the cold. His mouth finds mine, and this time the kiss is not atonement, but acknowledgement. We have killed. We have been instruments, and we will have to learn how to live with the choices we made. "Are you with me?" he asks finally, his forehead against mine. "My hand is my own," I say, "but I am still here." The answer is thin but true. He nods once, as if that is enough for now. The sky ahead is not clear. It is a jagged horizon, but in the crushed tenderness of dawn we decide, poorly and humanly, to try. We are both stained and both culpable. The work of rebuilding will be an architecture of delicate, dangerous forgiveness. The aftermath is a town of small cruelties. There are investigations the police pretend are thorough, men who disappear like smoke, and a silence from the Valerio house that sits heavy and mechanical. We return as if returning from a battle, feet muddy with something that will not lift. Dante's villa is the same on the surface. Linen curtains, polished silver. But the rooms feel emptied, like theaters where actors vanish after the curtain falls. We do not speak of Victor in the daylight. Names have a way of resurrecting ghosts. I wake to the taste of gunpowder and sleep, as if I am always a half step away from falling. My hands ache with the memory of recoil, and my skin is mapped with scars that tell stories I do not want to read aloud. Dante moves through the house with a quiet that is both remorse and devotion. He is tender, and tenderness in a room made by violence is a queer, raw thing. He makes coffee and does not ask too many questions. We sit together as if proximity might stitch the torn parts. "You did it," he murmurs one morning, looking at the bandaged edges of Victor's wound. Now stitched in memory but not in reality. "You killed the man who used you." "I killed a man who made the world smaller by using my pain," I say. The words are neither absolution nor boast. They are stones I place on the river to see where the current goes. Dante kisses my forehead like a benediction. "You saved us from his poison, did I?" The question is sharp. Saving is a tidy word. We have not been saved from the consequences of violence. We have been submerged in them. There are funeral rites. No public memorial because secrets are kept under bread, small and hidden. Marco's end is a private thing, arranged and whispered about by men who make farewell a business. Victor's death is a closed case with a neat file and a blank explanation that the press will prefer to turn into rumor, and then a lullaby. We watch the city move like an organism that prefers to forget. Perhaps it will not forgive, but it will forget enough to continue. We try to make a life that is not only reaction. Dante and I move carefully through the days, learning the language of ordinary touch. He brings me bread and presses a hand to the base of my skull the way a person might ease a headache. We go to the market, and he bickers over tomatoes with an old woman who knows him well enough to tease him without fear. The small domesticities are a salve, but the wound is not gone. Sophia sits with me one afternoon and says, blunt and tender, "You're not a thing of revenge anymore." "I am what I always was," I say, "only with a few more edges." She watches me like someone reading a book with torn pages. "Edges are fine. Just don't let them be the only map you use." I laugh once, brittle and shaky. "I don't know how to be anything else." "You'll learn," she says. "And if not, you have people who will help steady you." But the city is a patient animal. Its appetite for drama is inexhaustible. Not all debts are wiped clean. Men we toppled leave openings others are eager to fill. And power always attracts hands that want to hold it. There are nights when I wake to the idea that this is not over, that vengeance attracts vengeance like moths to flame. Dante knows that as well as I do. He moves with the knowledge that peace is a temporary marking on a map. Over time, the wounds close in the way a scar does, a raised memory under the skin. People move through our circle with caution and curiosity. Some offer condolences. Others offer contracts, alliances. Men in suits still come to the villa and hug Dante as if nothing terrible has occurred. The world forgets because forgetting is cheaper than reckoning. One evening, months later, as the sea smells like clean salt and the sky is unmoved by our tragedies, I find a photograph in the pocket of a coat Dante is about to put away. It is a picture of him and Marco years ago, before teeth were bared, when families were still families and hands had not been sharpened into weapons. For a moment, my heart is a tender, foolish thing, remembering any past that did not have blood in it. "You looked like a different man then," I say, holding the photograph up. It is small, creased, a relic. He smiles. A thin thing. We were all younger. I thought there were obligations that could be managed without ruining people. "You thought." I echo the same phrase he used once, and it tastes like copper. "You thought. And a house burned." "I know," he says, because there is no point in denying the obvious. There are no clean narratives here, only messy human failing and the long work of recovery. We continue to try. He teaches me a softer way to accept a touch, not as an encroachment but as a shelter. He presses his forehead to mine and murmurs things that have nothing to do with strategy or power. Sometimes we argue, small flames over independence and guilt. Sometimes we make love in ways that are gentle and complicated by the constant memory of metal and smoke. My body remembers violence in ways my mind will not let me forget. Dante is careful, and his care is both penance and pledge. There are days when I take the locket out and press it to my mouth. I think of my mother as a woman whose photograph I have never known in living memory. I conjure a face from small details and imagine a voice that never spoke to me. There is pain in not knowing, in feeling your origin as absence rather than a lineage. The truth did not free me from that emptiness. It changed the shape of the void. One afternoon, an envelope arrives without a return address. Inside is a slip of paper with a single sentence. Not all debts are closed. Watch your back. The handwriting is no one I recognize, but the sentiment is as old as men. I pass the paper to Dante. He reads it and does not look surprised. Threats, he says simply. Politics travel in paper. Are we safe? I ask. We're as safe as we make ourselves, he replies, and the caution in his voice is sober as prayer. We take measures, but we also live. We hold hands while crossing streets. We buy small, ridiculous things for each other like a coconut cake or a chipped teacup that reminds me of a summer I never had. For a moment, the city feels like it might soften around the edges. For a while, that's enough. But the shadow of violence is a teacher that never tires. And one night, it comes back to the door in a way I did not expect. I come home late from the gallery, the air sharp with the smell of oranges and cool evening. Dante meets me at the door with a look that is in equal parts warning and something softer. There's a man here, he says simply. He wants to speak with you. He? The question is small because I already sense the shape of what's to come. Dante nods and leads me into the sitting room. The man is not a stranger. He is a face from the past that hasn't been friendly enough to stay gone. He is a courier of sorts, a middleman who traffics in bad news. He sits across from me, his hands folded like he is about to ask a favor. You are the one they call Elena Moretti? He asks, his voice thin. I am, I say. What do you want? He slides an envelope across the table and does not look at me. The weight of the paper in my hand feels like a drop of ice. I open it and the contents are simple. A plane ticket, a hotel reservation in a city far from here, and a name. Meet at midnight, alone. Dante's face hardens. It's a lure. It's a trap, I say. The knowledge is steady, cold. Someone wants me alone. Don't go, he says. His hand clamps my own like a vice. I have to see who is still writing my fate for me, I answer. The stubbornness is familiar. I can't pretend the ledger is closed if men still send invitations to trap me. He looks at me like I am trying on a dangerous dress I have no business wearing. If you go, I'll go, I say. But you will be nearby. The edge in my voice is not askance. It is command. Because this time I do not want to be a passive player. We leave together. The plan a thin thread of coordination. The city at midnight is a black and white film. Shadows on the pavement, street lamps that make halos of the ordinary. The hotel is a quiet place that smells like cheap soap and long linoleum halls. I move with the control Victor taught me, every step precise. The man who meets me is not the courier. He is an emissary, a man with a face like a closed door. He speaks of old debts and offers illusions of truce, and asks me to step into a room alone if I want to resolve things. I say yes because sometimes the only way to find out who is pulling strings is to be the one on stage.
The room is dim, and the light slants in from the street.
I am not naive. I have procedures. My phone with a live signal to Dante, the small beeper he keeps on the table across the room in case I need to call it. My hand near the gun I keep in my purse. The man is smooth, his words slippery. He speaks of family legacies and fate and the elegance of resolution. I listen because sometimes you learn more by letting someone speak. When he finishes his monologue, he smiles. You did what was necessary, he says. You cleaned the rot. You think killing fixes anything? I ask. Does it make you feel lighter? He shrugs. The world is simple to those who can enforce it. Who sent you? I demand. Who still wants my death or my silence? He shakes his head. That is a question that costs more than you have the clear stomach for. I laugh then, the sound hollow. I have trained my stomach to take the weight of truth, I say. The man looks surprised, perhaps because most people, I guess, recoil at the idea of facing whatever name might be on the paper. You are very brave, he says, and there is something like condescension in it. I am not brave, I say. I am tired of living in other people's ledgers. When the conversation ends, it ends with a promise from the man, an "I will tell you soon," and a departure into the night. The room closes like a stage folding back on itself. When I leave, Dante is at the hotel door like a guardian. He looks at me as if the night's conversation has imprinted itself on his face. "Were you alone?" he asks. "For a moment," I say, and because we are both learned in keeping secrets, we let that be enough. We go home. The city breathes. The ledger grows a little thicker with the names we have added and removed. A few days later, there is a knock at the gallery. It is a small thing, an envelope under a door. Sophia picks it up and reads it out like a small prophecy, her eyes widening. "It's a note," she says. "For you." Inside is a photograph, old, grainy, of my mother holding a child. On the back are words in a handwriting I recognize because it has haunted me for months. Some debts only close when the right people are gone. There are more of us. Watch who you trust. The ink is dry, but the message is wet with the same menace that has stalked us. Someone is keeping a book on us and turning pages. I take the photograph to Dante and he holds it like a man assessing a wound. "Who would want to keep this alive?" I ask. The question is rhetorical and full of dread. He looks at me with eyes that are equal parts love and a soldier preparing for order. "People," he says simply. I lean my forehead against his chest and feel the steady, slow drum of his heartbeat. The war is not finished. We are not safe, but we are together, and for now that seems like everything and not nearly enough. We prepare. We make lists, we call favors, and we slow our lives as if dialing down could change the facts. The city will always be a place where decisions are made in the dark, but sometimes the light comes from within us, from the choice to stand and to refuse to be only instruments. We are damaged and we are resolute. We have taken lives, and we have taken responsibility in the same breath. And somewhere in the folds of this weary resolve grows a softer thing, a love that has learned to be honest in the teeth of compromise. It is not the naive love of my first gallery days. It is an adult thing, soldered together by consequence. It will not be a fairy tale, but when Dante takes my hand and presses it to his heart, it is steady, a rhythm I can count on when the world threatens to unmake us. The ledger will still have names, of course, but we will write our own margins now, and when the world tries to tell us who we must be, we will answer with our own signatures. The price is high, the cost is real, but we are alive, and in the life that remains, there is work to do, to hold each other, to craft truth into something that heals instead of simply consuming. The pier tastes of salt and old rope. Dawn cuts the horizon in a thin white line, and the sea breathes slow and steady, as if the world itself has decided to hold its exhale for a long moment. I stand with my back against the railing, the wood damp under my palms, and I let the cold move into my bones until my skin is taut and awake. The gun sits on the crate between us like an accusation and a relic, cold metal that knows my hands, that knows how to steady and how to kill. It is ours, and it is not ours. It has been the hinge of choices that changed everything. Dante comes up beside me without fanfare. He smells of cedar and steam, and the faint, stubborn trace of the night before. The way men who live on the edge keep small talismans of smoke on their clothes. He doesn't reach for the gun. He never reaches for it first when I am near. His hands are empty, open like a request. "You look like you could melt the sea," he says, and the voice is low and ridiculous in the best possible way. The sound of his laugh is a small, human thing that belongs in rooms with cups of coffee and not in the wreckage we both carry. "You look like someone who learned how to hurt and then tried to stop hurting," I answer. My words land with a softness I have been practicing. They are not accusation. They are recognition. He exhales, and the sound is small and culpable. We have been through war, literal and political, and the quiet between us is now its own territory, mapped by memory. I think of all the pieces that led to this pier, the laughter under gallery skylights, the first cigarette he handed me on a terrace like an offering, the morning I learned to clean a pistol without flinching, the night smoke and blood at the warehouse, all of it braided into rope that keeps us both from falling. "You could put it away," he says finally, nodding at the gun. His fingers brush mine, an accidental contact that feels like an oath. There is so much language in the way a finger grazes a knuckle. "I could," I say, "or I could leave it here and let it be what it is. A reminder. A memory. The truth tastes bracing, but I don't want my life to be measured by the weight of that metal. He turns to me then. The way he looks now is not the predator or the prince of rotten crowns. It is something closer to a man who has been humbled and has decided to try to be better, because better is the only thing that feels less like compounding grief. "What do you want?" he asks. The question cracks everything open with its honesty. There are no stratagems in it. There is just space. Truth, I say, and it's simple but entire. And choice, and a life that remembers the dead but does not live by them. He nods, and his hand finds the small of my back, a familiar anchor that steadies in the particular way he learned to steady himself. Careful, measured, not possessive. "I can give you what I can," he says. "I cannot give you absolution for what I have done. I can try to make the world less murderous for others. I can step away." His voice is steady, but his eyes are lit with the memory of the ledger, of the men who wanted more than their share. I know he means what he says because I have watched him make sacrifices in ways that cost him far more than comfort. He has handed over names, brokered quietness, paid men to disappear into legitimate fronts. He knows the price of unmaking a life built on edges. We dismantle what we can, I say. No theatrics. We trade empire for something else. We give it away, honestly, or at least put it into hands that buy farms and factories and turn ledgers into invoices that feed people, not fear. He nods. "I will negotiate. I will pay what must be paid to close the ledger. I will call in favors. I will replace violence with contracts as best as I can." His thumb traces a slow pattern on my hip, the same pattern that used to calm me into sleep, and then I will walk away with you. My throat tightens. "You will be safe doing that?" "No," he says without pretending. "But I will be the danger that walks with you, not the one that seeks the world out to burn it in the name of power." We laugh then, small and ragged. The sound is ridiculous and true. We are two people trying to reinvent the grammar of a life built on blood. It may be naive. It may be dangerous. It will be real. We spend the morning at the table in his study with papers and phone calls. He is masterful in the way he transforms networks, turning courier lines into food distribution channels, converting shady storage facilities into legitimate warehouses, persuading men who have never plowed earth to buy greenhouses that employ those who used to be expendable. He does it with a skill that looks suspiciously like the same skill that once built an empire of fear, but now it is repurposed. Money for farms rather than fear. He makes calls that sound like pardons and arrangements. He signs things with the methodical hand of a man used to controlling outcomes. Negotiation, not annihilation, becomes his language. At one point he stops and looks at me, suddenly very young and very tired, and says, "Promise me something." I raise my eyebrows. "What?" "Promise me you won't let me disappear into work as a form of penance. Promise me you'll tell me when I am slipping back into old patterns." His fingers find mine and squeeze, a gesture of dependence and trust. "You promise me the same," I say. "And the promise tastes like something we both need. When I grow cold, tell me. When I am about to use my training for hunger instead of protection, stop me." We sign no contract. We simply make vows the way people who love each other do, with honest vulnerabilities. The pieces of our lives are fragile, and we are both learning how to carry them without shattering. Weeks pass like pages in a book. News comes in fractured, cautious bursts. Quiet business sales. Handovers that look more like mergers than takeovers. Men formerly violent now buying interests in fisheries and floral distribution. There is skepticism. There are threats. Some men resist. Some men accept the profit of legitimacy. Power does not vanish. It changes address. There are financial settlements paid to families. Foundations set up for victims of violence. Anonymous contributions to hospitals and schools. We see our names in small print, attached to philanthropic gestures that might be half repentance and half cover. I do not judge the motives. I catalog the outcomes. Marco's story becomes a footnote in the city's gossip. Victor's name is a cautionary tale told to children with crooked teeth, like the myth of a man who thought himself justice. The ledger remains, pages tucked into drawers, names that will never be entirely erased. But we have moved certain entries from calls for Revenge to records of restitution, it is imperfect, and it is the best we can clean with the hands we possess. As the world rebalances in slow, bureaucratic turns, Dante and I steal time. We paint the gallery's back room a soft, ridiculous blue and plant herbs in clay pots. We sleep in each other's arms like people being rebuilt. When he wakes and brushes his thumb over my cheek, gentle, never hurried, I am both safe and raw. We laugh at the smallness of grocery lists and argue over tomatoes. We teach each other how to be ordinary in the way survivors learn to breathe, slowly, with permission. One afternoon, months later, Sophia walks into the gallery carrying a bouquet the size of her hope. She is alive and furious and steady, and our hands find each other like old promises being renewed. "You both look ridiculous," she says, thrusting the flowers at us. "Start living somewhere without so much blood in the walls." "We're trying," I answer, because trying is what we do now. We are a messy constellation of attempts. There are people we cannot bring back. Names sit in my mouth like stones that never dissolve. I think of the child in the alley, of the faces that will always be missing, of the manila folder I once clutched like a confession. I do not pretend the losses are covered by good deeds. I keep the locket tucked in the pocket of my jacket like a relic. Sometimes I hold it and whisper the names of those I never knew well enough. The memory is a religion I practice privately. There is, late one night, a moment that feels like the closing of a circle. We are on the terrace again, where I first heard him hum a song. The lights of the harbor tremble below, and the night is hot as a held breath. Dante wraps a blanket around my shoulders. His fingers are quick, an intimacy that has nothing to do with violence now. He presses his forehead to mine. "We will never be innocent," he says, "but we can be decent." "Decency is different from innocence," I reply. "It is harder," I pause. "It is choice after choice. It is waking up in mornings when nothing seems new but deciding again." He smiles the small smile that always feels like home. "Then let's choose for each other until we forget how to choose alone." We make a plan that is more simple than the labyrinths of names we once navigated. Move away from Italy, somewhere raw and quiet, and open a gallery together. A place where art is a currency that buys empathy, not fear. He balks at the romanticism, then agrees because it is the kind of stubborn, beautiful project he can sink his skills into. Logistics, acquiring space, negotiating with suppliers. He loves the architecture as much as the art. I love the quiet of paint, and the way a brush can mend the line of a wound. We do not run. We leave with acknowledgement. We pay what we owe as much as we can reasonably bear. We leave notes, legalized handovers rather than vanishing acts. People grumble and then learn to accept a new order when couriers begin carrying crates of olives rather than guns. The city adapts and goes on. I watch it move, and for the first time in years, I do not feel like a passenger in someone else's ledger. I'm a woman who made a choice. On the morning we leave, the pier is the same and different. The board under my boots creaks in the same complaint as before. I place the gun carefully in a metal box and push it to the sea. The lid is heavy and the salt air tastes like a clean wound. Dante watches the box as if the metal were a small, final confession. I do not ask him to watch it sink. The act is ours, not a spectacle. When we step back onto the shore, the world seems slightly larger. The horizon is not an edge, but an invitation. We walk to the car with only the luggage that matters, the locket in my pocket, a portfolio of the gallery's most precious works, a small stack of books Dante insists I bring, and the photographs we could not unmake but can choose how to keep. "Are you afraid?" he asks after a long silence that is a comfortable thing between us. "Of course," I answer, "every day. But I am also brave in new ways. I know my limits. I have my hands, and my training, and you, and that is enough for now." He takes my hand, the fingers I trained to use a weapon now sliding into fingers he asks for as a partner, not as an asset. He squeezes once. "Then come," he says. "Let's see if the world will let us be small and loud and messy and alive." We drive away from the city that made us and unmade us in equal measures. Along the way, I press my hand to his thigh and feel the pulse of a man I love for reasons tangled and true. We talk about the gallery we will open, about the first artist we will bring over, about a bench by the windows where people can sit and feel safe. We do not promise the future as some perfect thing. We promise to keep telling the truth as we know it, and to hold each other when the truth is not enough. Years later, this is not a fairy tale with a clean bow, but it is a life. I find myself standing in a small gallery by the sea, the light slanting just so, watching people move through rooms where paintings speak and do not hide their scars. Children run near a sculpture and laugh the high, uninhibited laugh of those who do not yet know ledger books. A woman comes up to me, touches my hand, and says, "This place feels like grace." I look to the doorway, and Dante meets my gaze. He is quieter now, less gilded by the machinery of old power. There are lines at his eyes that were not there before, deep as maps, but his smile is softer, kinder. He walks over, and in the middle of the room, surrounded by color and the low murmur of people living gently, he takes my face in his hands. He is careful. He is reverent. He presses his lips to my forehead. "You told me once I was the truest thing you found," he says, the memory warm between us. "You were right. I told you once to stop being a god," I remind him, and we both laugh. The sound of two people who have been struck and have kept living. He moves closer and kisses my cheek, slow, tender, and then my lips. It is not the urgency of our early love, but the settled, deep thing that comes from days of choosing. He traces a finger along the seam of my palm where my thumb always finds the small scar from the first time I fired a gun. "We made a life," he says, voice thick with gratitude and a hint of something like redemption. Not perfect, but ours. I rest my forehead against his and close my eyes, the gallery lights painting halos on our faces. In that moment, I am not the instrument of anyone's war. I am not the ledger or the locket. I am Elena, a woman who loved, who learned, who broke and rebuilt, who chose again and again. The gun is gone beneath the sea. The ledger is lighter, though never wholly gone. We carry memory like a companion, necessary, mournful, sometimes savage. But love, tender and complicated, becomes the practice that keeps us honest. It does not erase the past. It teaches us how to carry it. When I tell this story, when I sit in the small kitchen of our gallery and fold the memory into words for someone who asks how a woman who loved a man like Dante could possibly survive, do not tell it as a lesson in forgiveness alone. I tell it as a story about choices, about the hard labor of changing a life that once depended on fear into one that feeds people instead of hunting them. I tell it about sorrow and the way grief learns to make room for joy. I tell it about hands, how the same hands that hurt can also heal if you let them be taught a different craft. People listen. They cry sometimes. They sharpen their forks on the edge of the world, and then they ask me about small things, what my mother's voice might have sounded like, how the lemon trees grow without me watching them. I tell them what I can. I keep the locket in a box in the gallery's back room. Sometimes when the sea is loud and the light is low, I take it out and press it to my lips. The metal is warm with memory. At night, when the lights are off and the paintings sleep, Dante curls his fingers around mine and tells me the things he is learning. I tell him when he grows quiet in the right places and when he is careless in wrong ones. We keep each other honest. We keep each other alive. And sometimes, very rarely and perfectly, he lifts my chin and kisses me like the first time, slow and deliberate. And I feel the old rush as if I am meeting him again for the first time. I close my eyes and let the world narrow to breath and the press of his mouth. The sea beyond our windows keeps breathing its ancient, patient song. We are not saints. We are not monsters only. We are two people who have been broken and who chose again and again to rebuild with hands that learned a new trade. Making art, feeding people, holding the ones who show up with honest wounds. The ledger is still there. It will always be there in small shaded margins. But we, Dante and I, write our own margins now. And when someone asks if being under his gun was a prison or a protection, I smile and say, in the first person because I know it intimately, it was both. It was also the place where I learned to take my hand back,